We are just 9 days away from the New York Jets opening matchup against the San Francisco 49ers, who are five under the radar players to watch this season. Who better to bring on to talk all things New York Jets than Dom C of Talking Jets? Let's roll.
Jets, Jets, let's go.
Jets wide receiver Wesley Walker. Wesley, how you doing today? ESPN writer Mr. Rich Cimini, Jets reporter for The Athletic, Mr. Zach Rosenblatt, Hall of Famer and Jets legend Mr. Marty Lyons.
Your host, Connor Law.
Welcome in, everyone. We are here on a Saturday, actually the first Saturday of the college football season. We are just 9 days away from the New York Jets opening matchup against the San Francisco 49ers. Today, we are joined by Dom C of Talking Jets to break down five under-the-radar players to watch in the Jets opening matchup against the San Francisco 49ers. So let's bring him in. Dom C of Talking Jets. Dom, how you doing today?
Hey, Connor, how are you, man? I'm happy to be here. I'm doing well. Yourself?
Doing well. Glad to have you back on. I think we've had you on the show once before, and it was right before the draft started. So glad to see you. I mean, I was telling you off air for a bit. I mean, this is the first season where you're actually covering regular season content very closely as well, rather draft. And how you feeling? I mean, we're sitting here for, like I said, first college football Saturday of the year. Are you ready digging into some prospects, some tape?
Yeah, I have been very loosely just trying to get a gauge and an idea on who or which way I should attack, how I'm going to handle it. Listen, it's still very early in the process. It's still very early in the season. A lot of things are going to change between now, the 30th of August and April, come draft time. So I'm just crossing my T's, dotting my I's, getting everything in order. But yes, I've been grinding, man. I got I'm not as far along in my prospect scouting / grading as I'd like to be, but I don't think I'll ever be. So it's a slow process. It'll ramp up soon enough. And like you said, today is the real start of the college football season. So it's a good one.
Yeah, absolutely. Before we get into the five under the radar players, some quick news things I wanted to just get your opinion on. Jets bring back Jason Brownlee. The Jets released him. He ended up clearing waivers, brought him back on the practice squad, released Lance McCutcheon. The Jets go with 7 wide receivers and 4 running backs on their initial 53 roster. You look at a player like Brownlee, could you see any world where he is on the Jets active roster for game day? Maybe it's for injury, or do you see guys like a guy like Brandon Smith ahead of him?
Oh, man, I don't know. That's the second part of that question is tough to answer. I mean, if I had to say, I think Brandon Smith has done everything that you can ask of him in the preseason and limited reps. I mean, he caught everything that came his way. Both receivers, truth be told, both of the receivers are bottom of the room kind of guys. Neither of them really offer anything on specials, and neither of them have that one thing that kind of sets them apart from the rest of the wide receiver group, somebody that you have to pay attention to. If anything more, like I said, the contested catch ability that you saw from Brandon Smith, I think five opportunities of such that he hauled in all of them in the preseason. That I thought was something that I made a mental note of. Now, Brownlee's nice. Brownlee's a good, he's a good developmental player, but he failed to really impress or wow, more so just, like I said, I don't think the practice squad is the worst place for him to be. I'll say that much. I don't know if he's done enough to earn a 53-man spot. And I'm sure, barring any unforeseen injuries, that's probably where he's going to stay.
Absolutely. Brownlee has a big frame. He stands at 6'4". So does Irv Charles, though, who will most likely be playing gunner for the Jets this season. Just one more thing on the Jets wide receiver room here. Rich Cimini of ESPN joined Will Parkinson on his podcast, Turn on the Jets, and he said he thinks there's a quote good chance that Davante Adams is on this New York Jets roster as the trade deadline approaches throughout the season. I know you and Rich have some bad blood there, but what are your thoughts? What are your thoughts on the possibility of Adams, coming and playing for Gang Green, and also who, if the Jets still have this current wide receiver depth charts, these 7 guys, he comes in, who do you think's going to be that guy who gets pushed off?
Well, first off, let me address. I don't necessarily have bad blood with Rich Cimini. We went back and forth. We went back and forth a couple times on Twitter, and he ultimately blocked me. So that's that. I wish him nothing but the best. Man, you know what? I'm not ready to. I'm not ready to anoint Devontae Adams a New York Jet yet. I think there's a lot of things that have to happen. First and foremost is, I think I'll feel a little bit more open to the idea of having that conversation if the Jets start making making space, making move, start some contract restructures and renegotiations. If you see Quincy or if you see Quinn Williams get restructured, to open up some room, I think there might be the first kind of little peak that they're looking to do something. I know that it's easy to, that's an easy target is to just say Devontae to the Jets. However, I don't know if you can. I don't know if you can anoint it as anything good as gold. Listen, Rich is more tied in than most of us, so he that's his opinion that he thinks it's going to happen. I know it's the opinion of a lot of Jets fans in the Twitter, in the Twitter sphere and all over. So listen, I'm open to it. Who gets pushed off the roster? That's a good question, man. Like I said, obviously I think that the top 4, maybe 5 are locked in. Malachi Corley's not going anywhere. You invested good capital in him, and there's going to be a role for him later in the season, probably as he still becomes a little bit more accustomed to the NFL game speed and becomes more of a nuanced route runner. Obviously, Garrett's your alpha. Mike Williams coming back healthy, I think, is going to be an added weapon to this team. Listen, we're talking Devontae Adams. I mean, can you think of I dare you to give me a better trio than Mike Williams at the X, Devontae, playing the Z, and Garrett in the slot. That's lethal.
Yeah, Garrett in the slot is going to be something really interesting to watch. We saw him last year. He had to really be that everything guy. He had to be the Jets wide receiver 1 on the outside. He had to be the Jets wide receiver 1 in the slot. So it's going to be interesting. You let Garrett Wilson focus on one primary position there, see what he could do. Obviously, Mike Williams, bigger frame. He stands at 6'3" or 6'4", so he'll be one of the main guys on the outside. But I'm going to get into the main topic today, and that's listing 5 under the radar players to watch for the New York Jets. Don, there's a lot of different directions you could go in. You could go in the undrafted free agent direction. Watts, McGregor, Taylor. You could go with, I think Chuck Clark's a great one. He's coming off of an ACL injury. Quantez Stiggers, Isaiah Davis. Give me one of your under the radar players to watch this year.
Well, I'll start with the undrafted guys and under the radar player to watch. And I think this is, kind of multifaceted here. I don't know how much run he gets early on. But I would like to see if the locomotive of Leonard Taylor III keeps gaining steam. And like I said, it's multifaceted. One, you have Lecky Fotu that's out right now. Saleh in his last presser said that, it's probably a 2-week injury that they decided to just give him put him on that short-term IR and give him 4 weeks to get back. So there's already one spot there that's open. I personally think Leonard Taylor is probably better as that 3 tech that can press the pocket vertically. I think that's his skill set that really shows up best. But he's big enough where if you ask him to play next to Quinnen in certain schemes and certain reps, that I think he could do it. But yeah, the fact that Lecky's hurt now, that you have Kinlaw, Lecky Fotu, and Solly Thomas all on 1-year contracts, and you have Aaron Whitecotton, who, along with the rest of the Jets defensive staff, has shown a real penchant for developing defensive talent. There is a lot to like if you put all those, things in a bubble. The arrow is pointing very, very high on Leonard Taylor. For him, it's just going to come on, if he can match what's going on between his ears with the physical abilities, because I think that's where it is. It's like, the effort, at least in college in the past, I'm not going to, in camp, I thought it was great. But in college, the rub on him was you questioned his real passion for the game. They questioned his, his motor. There was a little bit of a motor thing, and like you know, Miami played him a little bit out of position. They
Yeah,
asked
that's
him.
what I was gonna say. Nose
They asked
tackle,
him.
yeah.
Yeah, they asked him to two gap as a nose tackle, and that's just not his strong point. Like I said, if you want him to let loose and push the pocket vertically, I think he can do that very well. It's just a matter of coaching him up and getting him, developed to have the mindset to go at it 100% all the time and not take plays off. So he's an interesting one. I think that there's a spot for him on this team long term, and they're kind of dangling it out there, on a line.
Yeah.
It's just a matter if he wants to go and grab it. I don't know if he's going to be, especially when Lecky comes back. I don't know if he's going to be a guy that's heavy rotation early on. But come week 14, week 15, week 16, if you told me that he was getting, 30 reps in a game, 30 snaps in a game, I wouldn't be surprised. So he's my number 5.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a very interesting one. You mentioned Lecky Fotu there. That's a name I wanted to touch on. Obviously, the Jets placed him on IR to start the year. He didn't show much throughout camp in the preseason. I really did not hear his name much. Some of it might have had to do with the injury, but let's say Lecky Fotu was healthy. Would you still have put Taylor ahead of him?
Probably not. I think
Okay.
I think Lecky Fotu probably fills. Listen, Fotu's another guy who's always played nose tackle in an odd man front, so he's always been asked to two gap. And the guys who have come and transitioned from that style and been asked to affect the game in a vertical set, meaning going pushing pockets and getting after the quarterback. Even Al Harris, who was known as that big stuff, run stuffing nose tackle, like he was excited to be in this defense because he can get at the quarterback a little bit. He can, he was asked to just play one position, one gap, and do his thing, man. He was really excited. I mean, the injury really, we didn't really get to see the full effect of that because of the injury. But listen, I mean, I don't expect Lecky Fotu to get many more snaps than Al Harris got, 10 to 15 a game. Early downs, run situations, heavy defenses. That's where Lecky's going to probably be in. Now, you talked about not seeing or not hearing a lot from him in camp. Again, remember, like the one tech is not someone that's really going to flash all that much as the DBs or as much as the ends and so on and so forth. So I think you have to take it with a grain of salt. Linemen on both sides of the ball are really hard to analyze and critique in camp because there's not much hidden and there's not much, it's pretty vanilla. So
absolutely. What I should have said Taylor. I think made a lot more noise than Fotu did. At least, because Taylor, you mentioned trench play is kind of hard to diagnose during preseason and camp, but I thought Taylor really made a case. Not so much during camp, but especially throughout the final 2 preseason games, he made noise and showed why he deserved a spot. But the name I'm going to go with, I've been high on him since the Jets' first preseason game, Isaiah Davis. I'm a big fan of Davis, his ability to return punts, although I think Gibson will be returning punts this year. Davis's ability to step in, return both punts and kicks, and then the way we saw him in the offense, I think he's a perfect 3-back to Hall and Allen. Obviously, you look at Breece Hall; he has the speed, the elusiveness. Braylon Allen with that power that fits this Jets power back scheme. I think Isaiah Davis, personally, I think the only thing that stops him is his snap counts, but I think there's a good chance for Davis to have a really, really solid season if the Jets play with huge leads, and then obviously they kind of put Breece Hall on the bench there, and Allen and Davis take over the game. What are your thoughts on Isaiah Davis?
I love Isaiah Davis. I loved him in college. He was a guy that I talked about and I studied really hard. He was the entire offense from his team in college. And again, I think he's the perfect blend of guys like, he's a perfect like love child of Breece Hall and Braylon Allen because he's big, he's strong, he runs hard, he runs low to the ground, good center of gravity. He's got enough shiftiness in his footwork and his ability to kind of cut and so on and so forth. Vision, not the best, not a guy that's going to find, create, see a very small crease on the backside and cut and hit it. very underrated as a pass catcher. He wasn't asked to do it a lot in college. But the thing that I love about Isaiah Davis the most, and I think what is probably his one skill set that flies under the radar is the most, is that he's ready to step in right now as a pass protector in the backfield. Both him and Braylon Allen were head and shoulders the two best pass blocking running backs in this draft, and just happens to be that the Jets got both of them. So I think that's the reason. I think twofold. I think he's going to be involved very heavily on special teams probably as our primary kick, one of the primary kick returners, one of the deep men in the back. And like you talked about with the punts and so on and so forth. But I think his ability to step in and protect the quarterback will help keep Braylon Allen and Breece Hall fresh. I don't expect him to get I don't expect him to split reps or anything like that with those guys, but if he gets one series every 4 series or something like that, he can affect the game in a positive way at many different levels. So yeah, Isaiah Davis, I love him. I do. I really like the idea that we have, our running back room right now is a 20-year-old, 2 22-year-olds and a 23-year-old. That's crazy.
Yeah. I mean, it's going young, and then all of them have, bring their own skill set to the table. Breece Hall, the elusiveness, his ability to change the field. Braylon Allen, that that full-on power, his ability to just bulldoze through guys. Isaiah Davis, his elusiveness, his moves, and then Izzy Abanikanda with that lightning speed, as you described it on Jake Asman's show, I believe it was. So we're gonna get into some questions in the chat before we keep it going. Daniel says, "Are you guys worried about run defense?" Dom, take it away.
No, I'm not worried about run defense, and here's why. Well, I shouldn't say that. Like, listen, I'm not necessarily worried about run defense, but here's why. I expect this year more so than not is we're going to be playing with leads, so we're not going to face as many 11, 12, 13 personnel where teams are trying to grind out and run the ball down our throats. I think that has a lot to do. The quarterback play has a lot to do with what the other team's going to be doing. Like I expect our pass rushers to really be able to pin their ears back and get at it this year, because we're going to be playing with leads and teams are going to be throwing the ball a lot more than running it.
Absolutely, and that's literally almost exact kind of similar to what Abe said there, and I completely agree. I know the run defense wasn't necessarily great throughout the preseason, but still, we haven't seen those ones together. I think this defensive line rotation is going to be really solid this year. Between you have Quinnen leading the inside rotation, between Quinnen Williams, Javon, Kinlaw. I wanted to get your thoughts on Solomon Thomas. I know some people. I don't know what the Solomon Thomas slander has been, Dom. I don't know if you've been seeing this, but I've been hearing a lot of Solomon Thomas slander. My stance on Solomon Thomas is, hey, he was the number 3 overall pick, San Francisco 49ers. Obviously has not lived up to the hype, but I mean, last year he had 5.5 sacks. I thought he was great against both the pass and the run. That's my hope for Takk McKinley. I hope that's what Takk McKinley could do and help resurrect his career this year. Obviously, you look at Solomon Thomas, you would go, what? He was the number 3 overall pick. But if you told me Solomon Thomas was a 5th or 6th round pick, I'd be like, wow, that guy is very, very talented for where he was drafted. What are your thoughts on Solomon Thomas this year?
Listen, he plays such a limited role. Like I thought he did well last year in the limited role that he got. I mean, I don't have the stats in front of me, and maybe you do, or you can tell me it. But I think he was upwards to like 4 or 5 sacks, if I'm not mistaken.
I think it was 5.5 last year. I'll pull it up though.
So you were talking in limited reps too. I mean, it's hard to deny
6 sacks.
6. There you go. So it's hard to deny the production in such a limited amount. But I don't think that's where his real strength for this team is. This guy is that veteran leader. This guy knows how to win. He comes from a winning organization. He's been through the gamut. Remember, another top 3 overall pick, that was one of those guys who, people say didn't pan out as a top 3 pick. So he's really had to hone in and develop and be and really, learn to embrace the role player that he is. And like I said, not only on the field as the role player, but I think he understands where his role is as a leader inside the locker room with a very young defensive line room. He's there to act as that veteran presence and kind of that, that extra set of eyes, that extra coach, man.
Absolutely, and just I think the leadership, not even just Solomon Thomas, but between C.J. Mosley, this veteran-based defense, I really like it, and I think when all's said and done, I mean, a game's coming down to the wire. That's really what you need from a defensive unit like the Jets. There's no question they have all this talent, but the leadership is also such a key part of that. But keeping it going with the under the radar players, someone I wanted to point out who I really like. He's another undrafted free agent, Braiden McGregor. Thought he
Hmm.
showed a lot. I think he has a really solid opportunity, along with Tack McKinley, to really make his case on why he deserves a spot on an NFL roster, especially with Reddick holding out. If this drags into the regular season, the Reddick holdout, which I think it will, I think McGregor's primed to be a really, a big focal point of this Jets defense. I know you guys could say, okay, Jermaine Johnson, Will McDonald, but I could see something, call me crazy, where he's ahead of a guy like Michael Clemens, possibly on the depth chart, just from what we've seen out of him so far. What are your thoughts on the possibility of him being ahead of Clemens on the depth chart and his contribution this year?
Yeah, I don't know if I'm ready to go there yet.
Okay.
I don't. And listen, I'm probably one of the biggest Braiden McGregor fans that you'll
Yes.
find. He was again a guy that I've honed in on all through last college football season, through this off season, through the Senior Bowl, and so on and so forth. It was February when I really started. I remember having a conversation with Will Parkinson about
Yes.
how like that, like this kid is going to make a name for himself one day. Listen, I don't think he's there yet, but he is kind of like the anti Leonard Taylor, right? He might not be as athletically gifted. He's got a very limited ceiling in terms of an athlete, but the heart and the effort that he plays with, play in, play out, the technique that he developed on top of having true NFL size and length, like there's no doubt in my mind that Braiden McGregor is going to be an NFL player. He's going to cut himself out a long NFL career. I see him probably this year. I still think it's to be determined. I don't know how much run he's going to get, especially with or if or when Hassan Reddick comes in. There's a good chance, depending on how who they activate or who they take off of the 53 for Hassan Reddick. There's a chance that there's going to be games where he might not be active, and that's fine. I think that there's he can help the game, and he does. He's involved in special teams, so that's a positive for him. I envision him to develop into more of that strong side defensive end that JFM was for us, where he was really known as that tough edge setting run defender with a skill set where he could still pressure and get in the quarterback's face. I mean, he needs a little bit more refinement. He needs a little bit more refinement in that pass rush tool bag. But all the bones of the house is kind of built. The foundation's there now. He just needs to just kind of hone it in and develop it a little more. So for me, like two arrows pointing way up for Braiden McGregor. Don't know how much we're gonna really see that develop this year, but absolutely, I'm ecstatic that the Jets kept him. Sure.
Everyone smash that like button. Make sure you are subscribed to the channel. We hit 1,000 subscribers. I think 2 weeks ago it was 2,000 by the end of the season. That's the goal. Everyone make it happen. Make sure you smash that like button and subscribe. If you'd like to call into the show, pin comment in the chat. We are joined by Dom C of Talking Jets here on the program. But I completely understand what you're saying there. Obviously, McGregor is an undrafted free agent. I think one of the main reasons that helped him make the roster is if you put a player like him on waivers, he's getting picked up right away, especially Harbaugh, his coach in Michigan. I mean, he would have been a Charger if the Jets placed him on waivers. But I'm really happy. I'm interested to see what he could do. I agree with you. It might take him a couple of years. Might be inactive. That was just a little hot take out of me in terms of the Michael Clemens one there. But that was my take on McGregor. Give me another under the radar player.
Well, let's see. We talked about Isaiah Davis. Isaiah Davis would probably be my 4. My 3, I guess I'm going to stick to the defensive side of the ball. And I don't know if this is necessarily under the radar, but this is, again, because he's not. But this is, again, a guy that for some reason, I'm really not sure about this one, gets a lot of undue slander all over from Jets fans and the Twitter world. It's DJ Reed. You watched him in camp some or in camp and against our ones when when the ones were playing the ones, like there was times where it looked like he got beat and he got picked on and so on and so forth. And I listen, DJ Reed isn't washed. I know a lot of people know that he's in his last year of his deal. The Jets haven't done anything and haven't approached him for what we know on a contract extension or some sort of juggling of that money so he can open up some space. So everyone assumes that you're just going to ride this out and kind of send him off to the, to the pasture. Everyone loves Quantez Stiggers, who's the new shiny toy. But listen, truth be told is Quantez Stiggers still has a lot of development to do. And DJ Reed is as solid of a pro as you come. Like, listen, that combo of Sauce and Reed on the outside is what, it's as important to this defense as CJ Mosley is in the middle, as Quentin Williams and Jermaine Johnson are up front. Like, those two guys really, and their ability to help, support in the run and understand the nuances of Jeff Ulbricht's defense really play a huge part. I don't know why the slander is for DJ Reed. I think that he's easily, in the top half of CB2s in the league. I mean, easily to me, this guy, he gets a lot of action because everyone avoids Sauce, right?
Yes.
Everyone avoids Sauce, but there's been a lot more big plays that I've seen DJ Reed make than I've seen him, get beat on bad. So
absolutely, you mentioned all the targets going at all three of the Jets starting cornerbacks: DJ Reed, Sauce Gardner, Michael Carter II. They were all ranked in the top 15 according to Pro Football Focus. But I'm gonna go to the back end of the Jets defense. I'm gonna go with Tony Adams. I think he has a really solid chance to lead the Jets in interceptions this year. Call me crazy. You guys could say whatever you want. He had 3 last year, finished for the 11th most, in the league. He's going to step into an increased role this season. Chuck Clark coming back from an ACL tear. I think he has a legit shot to also be another one of the under the radar guys. But looking at Adams' numbers, 60 tackles, 3 interceptions. He had 28 targets, allowed 18 receptions. With an increased role, I think he's going to handle it great, and I think he has a chance to have a really solid season. What about you, Dom?
Yeah, no, a huge Tony Adams fan. Love the skill set.
I have a Tony Adams jersey. If you did not know, that's a very rare one. Yeah.
Yeah, love the skill set. I think you got to remember another UDFA who's developing. There was flashes last year where, I thought that one of our safety positions was locked down for good. And then there was flashes where he wasn't the greatest. Like,
Exactly.
I think he's still developing. I love the ball skills. I think he's a perfect fit for our defense. I'd like him to develop a little bit more as in terms of run support. But he's going to be in the box a lot of the times. He's going to cover. When they go man, he's going to cover tight ends and so on and so forth. Again, he was a slot cornerback in college, as well as playing in a 2 high, as well as playing the 2 high. So I think you're going to see him in the box and strong safety covering, being asked to cover tight ends or big slots at times. And if he's going to do that, he's going to need to really improve the tackling a little bit. But outside of that, like, that guy is an easy New York Jet to root for, man. You can tell that he appreciates every effort he appreciates being on this team. He doesn't take anything for granted. He's always happy. He's always smiling, always willing to talk. You can tell he's a chirper on the field, which I kind of like. It fits very well into
Yes.
He's 1 of 11 on that defense, and he fits very well. It doesn't stick out, man. So I'm happy with Tony Adams. Listen, could you upgrade on Tony Adams? You can, but you're not going to have all pros at every position. That's just, not in a salary cap league. It's not going to happen. So if that's the worst case scenario, is that, you're not paying a big money to one of your defensive starters, so be it. I'll take Tony Adams.
Absolutely, and I'll let you give another one here. I know I gave Tony Adams. I think there's some other ones on the defense that haven't been called out yet that I'm personally a fan of. Who else do you got there?
My last 2, well, I'll start with number 2. I think Javon Kinlaw's in for a big season.
Oof.
Yeah, I think Javon Kinlaw is in for a big season. I know that, the film breakdown on him, some people, weren't very impressed. Again, I think you have a guy who is figuring out the mental part of this game, right? He's figuring out between his head, and not only that is that he's finally healthy, right? Last year, I think was his first year back where he stayed healthy, and there were spurts where he was dominant, and I think now being with Robert Saleh, someone he wanted to come and play for again, who he talks openly about that, how much Robert Saleh's coaching has helped him develop not only as a player, but and how his leadership has helped him as a man. But he came in physically in the best shape of his life, and anyone that has lined up over Quinnen Williams' career next to Quinnen Williams has produced career years. So I think Javon Kinlaw is going to have a very, very good season. It is a very, very good season. Listen, Saleh talks about all the time, playing with intensity and playing with violence.
Yes,
And that's
that's him.
that's Kinlaw in a nutshell, man. So I think he's going to have a good year. And my number one most under the radar guy, and again, I don't know how under the radar he is, but I expect a real big rebound season from Alan Lazard.
Oof. Yeah, Lazard. I think a lot of it again depends on Aid's health. What he's the opposite of quarterback proof, is what he's shown us. I think if Rodgers could stay upright, that's his guy. He played with him in Green Bay. I think he has potential to have a really solid season, but I think it really all depends on Rodgers' health there. Before we get into the questions in the chat, I do have a question for you involving the linebacker room. It wasn't really an important move, but it's something that caught my eye. The Jets ended up with going with Marcelino Macari Ball on the practice squad, rather someone who I know you were pretty high on and I seem to like, and that's Jackson Sermon, undrafted free agent linebacker out of Cal. Do you understand that move? Why don't you think they went with Sermon rather Ball?
Well, I think Ball again. I think it probably comes down to the linebacker room as it's constituted right now. Like,
Yes.
we know who the top four are, right? The top four right now. You're not going to tell me different. Obviously, it's Quincy and CJ. They're the starters. Jamie Sherwood's an easy number 3. Zaire Barnes is the 4th. Chaz Surratt can play both. He can play both the Will or the Sam or the Mike. So he can back. He's the 3rd guy there. Again, another guy that offers something on special teams, and that's where Marcelino McCray Ball comes in as well. He's a guy. Came from San Francisco, familiar with the system. He's got all the traits that a Robert Saleh linebacker has to have, and he can offer something on special teams more so than probably, I'm assuming, Jackson Sermon was able to offer. Listen, it probably just came down to a numbers thing. I thought Sermon earned a spot at least on our practice squad with what he was doing during the preseason. I mean, when given the opportunities, late in games, late in game 2, late in game 3, he was all over the field. But you're definitely going to keep Sam McGuavin. I expect the Guavin to be active on most weeks, being called up and to the active roster because of how much he can help you on special teams. And I guess if I had to guess, Connor, I'd say their decision came down to MCB or Jackson Sermon, and they just went with the guy who has been in the system and been here for a little bit longer in McCray Ball.
Absolutely. We have a few minutes left with Dom, so let's get into some of your comments. Adirondack, Fly Guy, we have a lot of players that are playing with chips on their shoulders, young guys and veterans trying to prove haters and doubters wrong. Dom, what are your thoughts on that statement, and who are some of the guys you think are playing with chips on their shoulder? I know Chuck Clark came out and said who's a guy who you think, really is willing to put everything out on the field?
Well, I mean, we talked about, I talked about before Javon Kinlaw. I mean, I think he's constantly playing with a chip on his shoulder. I think Takk McKinley, if he stays on the active roster when Reddick is activated, is another guy. I think he's got a lot to prove.
You think Watts? You think Watts? You think he has a better chance of going than Watts, McKinley?
Listen, I don't know, and here's what I'll say. I think it's I think it's a better possibility. You could cut Watts. I wouldn't be floored if that happened. But if you cut Tack McKinley again, he's as a vested veteran. You don't have to expose him waivers. You can default him right to the practice squad and make him active when you want to. But yeah, that guy's been playing with a chip on his shoulder all preseason. I think he's got something to prove. Hopefully he can stay healthy. That's been the biggest bugaboo with him throughout his career, is just the inability to stay healthy and really affect the game. So, I think Tack McKinley is definitely playing with a chip on his shoulder.
Absolutely, I completely agree. Chuck Clark is one who publicly came out and said, I think he's in for a big year. I mentioned he's an under-the-radar guy. It's going to be interesting, though. I like Tony Adams and Clark. It's just, how is this Jets safety room going to hold Tony Adams? He did have a great year last year. It's just, is he able to repeat that? Chuck Clark, he's coming off of a torn ACL. He didn't play it all last year. Is he able to return and be?
Well, it's funny. Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No,
the safety room as a whole, I think everyone expects Ashton Davis to get a lot of reps as that third safety. Don't be surprised if it's Isaiah Oliver over Ashton Davis. There are going to be some big nickel and three safety looks that the Jets run, especially when Tony Adams is up in the box covering tight ends. And between Chuck Clark and Isaiah Oliver and Ashton Davis, Isaiah Oliver is probably the one I would want playing single high and kind of roaming in center field more so than the other two. So I don't expect. I think Isaiah Oliver's been, he battled a little injury through the preseason, so he's kind of flew under the radar. He's making $2.35 million. He's not going anywhere. They moved him over to free safety for a reason, and I think he's gonna get some. He'll get some run in some certain schemes and some certain looks for sure.
Absolutely, and it's going to be interesting because JBC, Jet safety, converted to cornerback, and Isaiah Oliver, San Francisco, converted from cornerback to safety.
Yeah.
I think one of the main things that helped Davis get that extension was his contribution on special teams. I think that's really the main reason why he got that extension and is back in the green and white. But keeping it going, Chef Kevin checking in. Connor and Dom, how much trust do you guys have in Clemens? Dom, I know you spoke a little bit about Clemens, but what are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, and listen, I think it's a good question, Chef. I don't know if it's necessarily I don't trust him. I trust Michael Clemens implicitly. I just think that his role is what his role is. I don't expect Michael Clemens to be Jermaine Johnson.
Yes.
I don't expect him to be JFM. I don't expect him to be Bryce Huff. I expect him to be Michael Clemens, and that's a guy who's going to give you, he's going to play with intensity and violence. Probably on early downs, he's gonna set an edge and which he's gonna overset at times, so on and so forth. But he's gonna be a physical presence on the defensive line. He's very key and crucial in playing that pick man and that stunt and twist game. So my expectations, my trust meets my expectations for him. I don't expect him to be anything more than a role player and a guy who's gonna bust his butt on special teams. So.
Now, could you see something where maybe Will McDonald takes a leap ahead of him? What are your thoughts on McDonald? I know we're running out of time, but this is just the final thought here. What are your thoughts on McDonald?
I think McDonald's great. I think McDonald. People have expectations because he was a first rounder that he's got to come in and be Micah Parsons, and that's just not the reality. The harsh reality is that not every first rounder is going to start. And I think the pick of McDonald last year was probably a pick knowing what was going to happen this year and next year when you could be down. They knew they were going to be free of Carl Lawson. Maybe they said, well, listen, we have to protect ourselves in case we don't extend JJ or, what's going to happen with JFM. His contract is going to be up. They ended up trading him, a year early, but, those kind of situations. So I don't think it was a bad thing to take him. And listen, he's a unicorn, man, in that skill set.
Yes.
Like his bend and his length and his bend is something that's hard to deal with off the edge. It has to get more consistent. He's got to develop or be able to transfer some of that speed to power. But I think with time that's going to come. He's not a worry of mine. No, for sure, he's not a worry of mine.
Dom, I appreciate it. Really appreciate you joining me here on the program. The final question I ask here to every one of my guests, 4 dinner guests, anyone in the world, dead or alive. It could be a family member, someone around the NFL, anyone in the world, dead or alive. Who are you taking?
Wow. Oh man. I'm going to. You know what? I'm trying. This is a tough question, Connor. This is on the spot. I'm going to take. I'm going to take Jim Nagy.
Ooh.
Yeah.
A draft guy going with the founder of the Senior Bowl.
Yeah, Senior Bowl bigwig Jim Nagy. I would love 15 minutes or so just to shoot it and pick his brain. So he'd be one. I'd probably take Kobe Bryant. I love the the mentality, that Mamba mentality, and then you'd add myself, and I'd probably add my uncle Dominic, who was a football player, played semi-pro when there was a semi-pro league back in the day, and I love not only do I say I love him, he's my uncle, but he understands me and the passion that I have here for the X's and O's and stuff like that, and I think that would round out my 4 probably is my uncle Dominic, Kobe Bryant, and Jim Nagy.
Dom, not everyone is like you. Not a lot of people are like you with the X's and O's, everything you know about the game. Appreciate you joining me. You got any final thoughts?
No, man. Listen, Connor, I'm happy we could carve out this time.
Yep.
My final thoughts are Connor Wegman, quarterback, Texas A&M, playing tonight at Notre Dame, 7:30. Watch it, guys. He's a name, especially for the Jets fans. I think he could probably be in that late first round where we hope to pick if he doesn't just take off this year and become QB1 in the class. That's a name to watch. Outside of that, Monday nights, the Talking Jets show, myself and Ryan, we will be having Steph Sanchez from the podcast 49 Carats breaking down the preview for week 1 San Francisco. So we have a San Francisco 49ers content creator and podcaster coming on the show to talk matchups and likelihood of the Jets winning. I'm kidding. We'll talk all things about week 1, man, because we're here. We're close. We're 1 week and change away.
Absolutely, and then you're also co-host on Thursday Thick of It and Green.
Thursday Thick of It. That's it.
Dom, I don't know if you know, but I will actually be appearing on the Thursday Thick of It this week with
Get out of here,
you guys.
So
yes,
we will see.
Yeah, Bean reached out to me today, and I will be appearing on the Thursday Thick of It with you guys. But really appreciate you joining me here on the program. Everyone, thank you guys for watching, and as always, JTS Jets.